TAC. And we'll start with introductions. So I'm Michael Williams with Coast.
Michelle Muir, City of Summersworth. Gretchen Young. Justin Crane, City of Baylor.
Wayne
Shanna Saunders,
Davey, SRPC.
Colin Lentz, Traffic Regional Planning.
Marshall Goldberg, Brookfield.
And going around, Steve.
Steve Pesci, University of New Hampshire.
And
Jen Sis, Stratford Regional Planning.
Pete. Lindsay.
Lindsay Butler, Town of Newmarket.
That's it.
From the town of Barrington.
Lucy.
Lucy St. John, New Hampshire DOT. Good morning.
Beverly.
Doesn't look like her mic's working.
Looks like you might, you're not coming through, Beverly. It looks like you're saying something and stuff, so just an FYI. Well, we see you there. Lee.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Lee Levine, Federal Highway Administration.
Katrin.
Katrin Casper, Lee, New Hampshire.
And then we have Rachel Jackson, and then Megan is hanging out in the conference room, running the show from behind the curtain there. So thank you for being here. We do not have a quorum just yet, but I was saying the CMAQ item, I put it on there as an action item, so the board would have an opportunity to kind of formally endorse the projects. We're still in process with DOT on the scoring process. To recap, we are not going to hold a regional ranking process for the projects this year. And those, sorry, for new folks, that's congestion mitigation air quality projects. Towns and agencies from across the state submitted projects. We had a handful in our region. Almost half of the projects at the state level were EV charging projects. And the rules on those just came out. So DOT is proposing to separate the EV projects, defer them, and make a decision on those in about 6 months so that everyone can get their ducks in a row, and then more than that, fund all the other non-EV projects, pending the air quality analyses that still have to go along with those that are in process, and we're working on that with DOT. So wanted to give the project sponsors in our area a chance to talk about them, showcase them. I think they're really good examples of CMAQ projects, so wanted to just have folks see those. And then I have a separate thing. So again, not hypercritical that we don't have a quorum today. We won't belabor things. Any questions on the CMAQ process? Before? Yeah.
And this was just from a neighbor who asked, is air brakes from a truck, is that that's not air quality, or is it?
That, I don't think that gets counted as air quality. It's noise. It's a noise factor. So you see in some places in little towns where they have no air braking or J brake, I think is the trucker term. So that's a noise thing, but not an air quality project. I wouldn't think.
Okay. And is there such a thing as a sign that goes up, if you can get one, that says no trucks, no air braking?
Yeah, I've seen them. I don't know the process for getting those installed, but if you probably have to do there's probably a noise study that would happen due to proximity of houses or the central business district or something like that.
Gotcha. I can take that offline with you.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to look up stuff for you. All right, so if I don't know who wants to go first. I pulled together some slides, and I've got Google Maps over if you folks want to go first and talk about your CMAQ project, since we're not talking about the minutes. And I realized I totally forgot to put those in the PDF in the packet that I sent out, so don't have to worry about that. But Gretchen and Jill, do you want to talk about the Dover project?
Sure.
First off. And see if I can not screw up sharing my screen. What are folks online seeing as far as my what I'm sharing?
Seeing your desktop and a few folders open.
All right. Now, do you see a PowerPoint?
I see the PowerPoint document, not the slideshow mode.
Figures.
I can see the slideshow.
I mean, it's not in full screen. It's just like the PowerPoint, as you're working on it.
Okay. Projectors. Okay. How about now?
You're good.
Looks good.
So yeah, I just put a couple of screenshots from the application and stuff, and I can bring up Google Maps, but otherwise, did you have something else for me to put on here, or just want to walk through the project?
We can just, I did send you
Oh, right, yes, you
a
did,
PDF,
yes.
but it's not terribly important.
I did get that, I did get that.
If you don't have it, that's okay, and I can just speak to it.
Oh, I got it right here.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So there's just a couple pages here. So yeah, so this is so we put in an application for improvements along Route 108 on Durham Road between Mass Road and Daily Drive. So just a little bit about Route 108, which you guys may probably already know, but it is a regionally significant corridor as it serves a link between Dover and Durham. It's a major commuter route for the majority of residents south of the Spalding Turnpike, and it provides access to Dover's middle and high schools. And it's been identified as a critical corridor in the Dover's master plan, since it provides an important role for commuters. And in 2016, the city and the Dover School District engaged Sebago, Technics, and Alta to conduct a comprehensive traffic safety and pedestrian study of this area. And the study included Mass Road, I think, all the way up to Central Ave. So this project would really just be the first phase of this study. So the need for this project is that there's noticeable delays exiting Alumni Drive and Daily Drive from Durham Road, and these side streets experience excessive delays from entering Durham Road. So the purpose would be just to move the vehicles more efficiently through this corridor between Mass Road and Daily Drive by improving the intersections at Mass Road, at Alumni Drive, and at Daily Drive. So again, this is just the first phase of this study that you're seeing here. So if you want to move to so the first intersection is Mass Road. It's a signalized intersection, and the proposed improvement here would just be add a camera, video detection. Right now, it has loops, and we just all know that loop detectors aren't as reliable as cameras, and cameras would just allow to monitor the traffic flow in real time and just improve public safety response times. And Dover actually did a CMAQ project, I don't know, several years ago, maybe not several years ago, a couple of years ago, to install the same camera system and a few signals along Central Ave. So we'd just be looking to do the same thing here. So if you want to scroll down to the next page, this little arrows pointing to the camera that we want to install here at Mass Road.
Question on that, Jill, actually, separately, We're talking to New Hampshire DOT about the possibility of enhancing camera and AI software that could count pedestrians and vehicles. So there is software that DOT has access to that they use that we're hoping to kind of pay a little bit more for and pony up so that we could send them camera footage from a camera. And it can literally draw lines on the intersection where pedestrians went, where vehicles went. And so we have to go out and do turning movement counts for projects like this. And thankfully you guys have the 2016 data, but we could just run the camera for a week, feed it through the AI, and that could do the turning movement count for us. And we don't have to send a person out there to sit and play with the big Game Boy. And then we could actually get an idea of how many pedestrians are using that crossing and see if they're actually using that crossing or going somewhere else. So just to note that we're trying to make that happen. And if there is I don't know about compatibility on the footage, which that's a detail we haven't figured out yet, but just something to keep in the back of your brain that if it can record, that could be a really big thing.
So it can, it might be a different module, I'm not sure, but there, we do have some camera systems that are able to count the traffic.
Yeah.
I don't know about pedestrians and
Pedestrians, I don't think we
like
got,
this, but.
I think it could, but I don't think, I think it was more money.
Yeah.
I don't think we
Okay,
did
it's
it.
just vehicle.
Well, that's our hope is that the AI software, it's a my vision that we've heard from, or we've looked at it, but usually you would have to get their camera and then send the video footage to them, and then a human has to actually watch the video, which sounds horrible. But our hope is that DOT's artificial intelligence AI could just take that footage and do the count for us, so the camera doesn't have to do it. That's what we're hoping. So it doesn't have to be a specific camera there. It just has to record the footage. But we're investigating that just to know.
That's
Okay, so the second intersection would be at Alumni Drive. And the two alternatives were talked about in that 2016 study. One would be to signalize the intersection, and then the second was a roundabout. The roundabout was preferred or recommended. And this is just another view on Durham Road looking at it. So Alumni is to the left. And so as part of that project, as part of this project, we'd recommend, or we want to construct the roundabout. And that would just mitigate congestion during peak times and improve roadway safety and add some crosswalks so it's a little bit safer to cross the road. And the third, you can go down to the third.
Is alumni, is it alumni that is part of the community trail? Or is it daily?
It's daily.
It's daily, okay.
I don't know that alumni couldn't be, but right now the proposal is going down daily.
Oh, but the community trail comes from the south and goes up through the
Correct.
middle school this way, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So daily drive, the improvement here would just to be to add a left turn lane on Durham Road. This intersection didn't warrant a controlled stop, so no signalized or no roundabout, just a left-hand turn. I think most people that are waiting to take the left-hand turn, and if the people who are trying to go straight just kind of go around them, and it's really not safe right now to do that. There's not enough room. They end up going into the gravel shoulder. So just to formalize that left turn lane. So again, just to mitigate construction during peak times. And yeah, so those are the three intersections that would be part of the project. Additionally, we'd be looking to improve the overall corridor for new sidewalks to fill in the gaps, evaluate bike lanes and bus stops. Those general improvements, I'm not sure would be eligible for the CMAQ grant, but
They are, it's a little harder to get estimates without the detailed data. So a roundabout, I can plug in the traffic and the turning movement count data from that study, and it pumps out a result. Something like a bike lane asks you to estimate basically how many cars you're going to take off the road, which is a little harder to do.
Yeah.
But we're still working out how to actually do the air quality with DOT.
so that's the project that we submitted in a nutshell. If there's any questions?
I'll highlight again the value of having, or the criticality of having the data from the study. So if folks have a CMAQ project or a project in general, the sooner we know so that we can go out and collect data, the better, because I can't do the air quality analyses without the data that were in that study. And so thankfully the projects that we do have this round all had data associated with them. So just a note for everyone. And now is a great time to tell us if you have a project idea, because we're getting ready to do the summer, we're gearing up for the summer data collection right now. So, all right. Any other questions on the Dover project?
So is that funded? How does the funding work on that? Is it 50-50 or something? Or what is it?
This is 80% federal, 20% local.
Oh, okay.
That's the general gold standard match ratio for federal dollars for highway projects or for infrastructure projects. They don't go for in-kind match. Other programs do, but not something like this. All right. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
I threw some things together, and my map went away. Here we go. Okay. So UNH, you guys have, UNH has 3 projects. And I guess I'll let you guys talk about the bus ones. Again, this was an easy one because it's for the air quality, because it's remove old bus, add new bus, and show the difference between the air quality benefits. So Beverly or Steve, I don't know which one of you guys want to talk about the buses.
It's going to be Beverly as long as her audio is working. If not, I'll jump in.
Is it working?
Yes.
Darn. Our intent is to replace 3 2CNG and 2 electric vehicles, ideally with 4 of our older vehicles. Putting out
Kind
to
of
bid.
gravelly. Or your audio is a little gravelly. Like underwater.
Steve, you want to take it over?
Sure. So this is, as you said, Colin, a pretty clean fleet replacement. So it is replacing these biodiesel buses that are will be, by the time this funding is available, well beyond their usable life. You see on the map the 2 existing Wildcat routes that will be in existence by the time this grant funding is available. The Dover, which we call Route 3, and Portsmouth, Newington, which we call Route 4, as well as the campus connector public system that runs in the town of Durham exclusively. Of course, by the time this money is available, we will have discontinued Newmarket Route 5 service, which ends this at the end of this May. So we're looking for $3 million of federal funding. UNH will provide the 20% local match for that money. And at this point, we anticipate that we will replace the buses with CNG and or electric buses. We're kind of phasing out the procurement of diesel or biodiesel, as we've been running them for the past 12 years, buses, as we move towards electric. And last year was the first year that our fleet was predominantly compressed natural gas powered. So pretty excited about this moving into this new generation of electrics and CNGs. And was on a call the other day, and discussion of CNG electric hybrids has popped up again. So who knows, but it'll be these 2 fuel sources in some permutation. And I think for the air quality, we'll probably have you, Colin, do the split that you see on the screen as far as emissions modeling. So I think that's it. Bev, did I get everything? Thumbs up on that. So that's the summary. And, we're very happy. I should close by saying on this one that obviously transit, globally took a hit during COVID. And we're very happy with our first half of this fiscal year's data. We see transit bouncing back. It still has a way to go, obviously, but there's no getting around that transit is very important to the university, and especially we see the increased demand, the capacity loads is on the campus connector system in Durham. And we very much look forward to having low and no emission vehicles and quieter vehicles running on our campus and downtown. And it's something that our students, faculty, staff, and visitors very much notice and ask questions about, and are encouraging the university to be a leader in zero emission vehicles. So we look forward to positive review of this application.
Thank you, Steve and Bev. And just a note for other folks in terms of the air quality benefits. The template that I've looked at and that we've used in the past just looks at the buses. It doesn't look at the power source. And UNH is interesting in that it has, the campus has a cogeneration plant. It burns methane from the Rochester landfill to generate electricity and heat. And so the electricity for the bus, for the EV buses, and for the EV charging stations, their other project, the majority of the electricity would come from the UNH grid. So it's just another kind of feather in the cap that doesn't get incorporated into the calculations in the template that I have, but we have to emphasize that qualitatively as far as the statewide benefits. So you're not charging a bus from a coal power plant. It's
Thank you very much for bringing that up, Colin. Yes.
So how much do you save roughly, or what's the impact, generally speaking, when you go from a bus, a bus to an electric bus?
that's I don't have a number for you. And then again, if you're charging it off the grid, transit buses in general, transit has a really good air quality benefit for taking individual vehicles off the road.
Right.
And if you're doing an electric one off a clean power source, then that's a big number.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest ones are if we could get Amtrak some newer locomotives. Because those are old crusty locomotives and they have a lot of emissions.
And who makes those? Who's the manufacturer of the EV buses?
So they will be put out to bid. So there are many manufacturers of EV buses. Obviously it'll all be federal transit compliant. So it'll be Buy America, Build America through a bidding process, and long way to go on that. But it obviously would be a bid effort. These are expensive vehicles.
And the other projects, roundabouts, have a significant air quality benefit because people aren't stopping. Again, the critical phase or the critical term in the federal highways program is congestion. So if the roadway is congested, people are just sitting there, belching emissions into the air.
Yeah.
So roundabouts, the all electronic tolling on the turnpike has a surprising difference in terms of the air quality benefits. Because instead of going down to 25 and then chugging up the hill in the Rochester example,
Right.
you cruise on through, so your momentum carries you up that hill. So if it's a truck, then they have to slow way down to their first gear and then chug back up the hill. So yeah, all these projects, I'll just say, having looked at the numbers briefly, I'm confident that all the projects have a really good air quality benefit. Next one.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Colin. So this is a location that and the next two projects actually are UNH and Town of Durham supported projects that we've put in. So I think many of you are familiar with this location. It's immediately west of our campus. It's the junction of two legs of New Hampshire 155A, which takes an acute angle there, and Main Street, and then Mast Road that goes out to our agricultural district. It's an unsignalized intersection at this point. What we're looking to do is to upgrade that intersection. Our preferred solution is a roundabout. But of course, as we go through the design evaluation process with DOT, we'll look at all possible alternatives here. So that would include signalization, but I think town and university at this point very much prefer the roundabout. We have met with DOT District 6 to apprise them of our application, and the district manager feels that a roundabout would be a good solution as well. We were lucky enough in the application process this fall to have the evaluation done by VHB, kind of I would call it a 5-10% design concept. So that helped us with the budget figure that you see on the left side of the screen there. That was a project that, a budget that was arrived at through that process, as is the conceptual design you see on the screen. We hope maybe we can even trim it down to scale a little bit. This is the gateway to our campus from the west and in our agricultural area. But it is a busy intersection. And, just to give you a sense of scale of cars, it's not just the 12,000 a day through on Main Street and probably 8 or 9 coming up 155A. We have buses going through this intersection during academic months constantly between the campus connector routes, the transit garage on the left. It wouldn't be uncommon that a Wildcat transit bus is going through this intersection every 10 minutes during a normal business day. So a lot of issues here with backups, cross traffic safety, and relatively high pedestrian and bike volumes. We have a trail on the bottom right quadrant that connects campus with the western side of campus. So a very busy intersection, and the university is moving forward with some concepts for expanded development, which would be in the lower left quadrant of your screen, what we call the west end. So at this point, we are showing a match with the university and town being the match committers. All the quadrants of property, no right of way here because the university owns all 4 quadrants. So right of way will be 0. We do hope that DOT participates financially in the match as well, given that it's 2 legs of a state highway. And I think, Colin, to your point, when we get maybe some video turning movement counts, I think air quality benefits will play out pretty obviously on this one.
Agreed. And last one.
Last one is our EV charging application. And I want to say first off that, as I mentioned last meeting, I really appreciate and support the DOT's decision to kind of hold all the EV applications back in a separate pool and look at it as we finalize our plans with the other big EV funding category, the NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. This graphic map is a really good example of how we're kind of thinking about EV charging holistically across the campus and downtown. So this is a map that we've coordinated with the town of Durham. It's a little bit busy, but what it basically was showing is proposed EV locations and charge level or charging capacity at different locations. And the 0.5 mile, the 1 mile, those represent the NEVI program has a 1 mile from designated EV network limitation. So Route 4 showing on your screen is in the network. So you can see the 1 mile boundary that charge stations within NEVI funding would need to be. And then we have a few that are, depending on how you measure it, if you're doing it bird fly or car drive and how accurate, we have a couple that are just outside the edge. So when we get into this discussion with DOT, we're going to very much hope that the DOT takes advantage of the additional flexibility of the CMAQ program, and not just for UNH, but for smaller communities that are not on a designated network that we might have additional flexibility with CMAQ money to use destination charging, lower level, less expensive EV charging for other parts of the state. So I think the best way is to show you that map that Colin's got on the screen. We're asking for $300,000 of federal funding to facilitate EV charging. And I'll just close by saying a week does not go by that I get a call or an email from a constituent at UNH asking why we don't have more EV chargers on campus. And although we have a plan and have policies in place since 2018 regarding placing them in visitor parking lots, we do not have any on campus. We just have the one pod that we have shared with the town of Durham and Petty Brook lot. So very much looking forward to seeing a big expansion of EV charging capacity on our campus and in downtown Durham.
And I'll kind of agree with Steve. We're both sort of aligned in our agreement that it's good to take some time to look at all the EV charging projects. It's not clear how to really effectively measure their air quality benefit. The templates, again, look at if you put in a charger, how many people are going to switch to an EV rather than or how many, how many EVs are going to be adopted in that area. What the area is completely up for grabs as far as the analysis, and UNH probably has a pretty big catchment area, I'm guessing, for people driving. But as Steve mentioned, where they go on in the campus area determines how they get used, and all of that. And again, where the power source comes from isn't quantified in the templates that I've looked at, but that should be considered here if the power is all getting generated locally.
Yeah, I would just add to what Colin's saying that, with EV charging, you can't make a very good case for congestion mitigation. It's still a private vehicle. And, from a UNH policy, we will be charging for both the parking and the power for a user because we have a demand management policy that focuses on fewer private vehicles. That's why we have our transit system. But obviously, you can certainly make the emissions reduction calculation for an EV versus a gas or diesel powered vehicle. So it's interesting. I think in some ways the CMAQ program is still adapting to evaluating EV charging, but it's clearly eligible. And, we're all going to learn on that. We're all learning on this. And I think the 6 months will be a really good time for the DOT and our communities to figure out how to deal with EV charging and standards. And, the thing is about the charge level. So you see that in the bottom right, dramatic impacts in the cost per charger. So a level 1 is like a 110 outlet, right? Cheap. Level 2 is probably what you see in most places right now. Could cost $15,000 to $25,000 per charger. Level 3 is exponentially more than that. So we want to be judicious in the output that we get for our investment.
Is there some requirement of how far apart they are?
In the Steve mentioned the NEVI program, that's the federal, so the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Act. And that is geared for those level 3 chargers, the super fast, like getting as close to the gas station experience as possible.
Right.
Those are required to be, the goal is to have charges every 50 miles. So they basically have to be 50 miles apart and 1 travel mile from a major highway. In a New Hampshire's case, that's 93, 95, Route 4, a handful of major highways.
So you can put as many as you want as long as it's within a mile.
There have to be 4 charge ports at any charger. The federal emphasis is on get a charging network along the interstates.
Right.
So they want chargers every 50 miles. And so there's a discussion process of the, whether a balance between that approach and putting chargers at destinations like UNH, rather than people fueling up like they would at a gas station, get to their destination and charge.
So all those bubbles represent a charger.
All those bubbles represent possible charger locations, but if you notice, only 2 of them where we would consider level 3, with T Hall and Edgewood. Just not a big fan of the cost value of level 3 charging as a network. I would suggest, thinking out forward 10, 20 years, every parking lot will have EV charging, period. It will just become the norm. So it looks like a lot of bubbles, but they are level 2. And I would suggest that this is a plan, if you will, this is like a 10, 20-year plan for EV charging in town and campus. And I would suggest, if you think out 10, 20 years, any parking facility of value will have EV charging capability.
Ricky?
Yeah, hey, just a couple quick questions for Steve, if you don't mind.
Sure. Please.
I'm curious. One, being a UNH alum, how publicly available would these chargers be? I know that, for instance, like the T Hall lot isn't always open to visitors, for instance.
So all of these locations will be in what we call visitor lots or pay per hour lots. So they're all publicly accessed lots. The T Hall lot, I don't know when you left UNH, but we do have pay station spaces in T Hall lot now. And it's the very rare day or event where those aren't publicly accessible. So none of these are in permit restricted lots, I guess is another way I should say it.
But they'll be generally like a visitor or a traveler could pull up at any time of day, supposing that it's open, they could get in. Okay, cool. The other question I had was, do you know what the kilowattage for the direct current fast chargers you were proposing would look like?
So again, it's conceptual here. I know that that's all over the map. What I understand, so as Colin was saying, that some of the super fast DC direct current chargers are almost replicating a gas station experience. Like depending on the size of the battery in the vehicle, it might take 10 minutes to fuel a Tesla or 5, but that comes at an immense infrastructure cost. And in many ways, the electrical network required to facilitate that, especially in an urbanized or developed neighborhood like you see on your screen, is very high. That's why a lot of those DC fast chargers are being built on highways. You could easily spend $100,000 just with the power supply, let alone the charging unit. So again, this is where we're going to have to really be judicious in the cost benefit of the investment for these DC fast chargers. Colin and I use this term destination charging, and I don't know if that's a common term, but to me what that means is a space where you pull in and it's level 2 charging, like 8 to 15 kilowatts an hour, and it allows you to park, and you're probably going to be there 30 minutes, an hour, something like that. It's not the 10-minute super fast DC fast charging.
So in my experience running the Volkswagen mitigation plans fast charging grant program that we're running, I mean, a 10-minute charge, if you're looking to fill from 20 to 80%, we're talking incredibly high kilowattage there.
Yeah.
That's a 300 kilowatt charger. That's quite outside of what I've been looking at for this program. For instance, if you look at our recent releases. So I was just wondering if you had like a model estimate, or I'm just curious for my own education. This is, like I said, I'm running a different program.
Obviously, these are under 50 kilowatts. I mean, that's kind of the edge of my electrical understanding, but we're not getting up to the 300s anywhere close to that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense.
I guess I'll close with saying it is still the UNH's philosophy, as far as our community, that we are not trying to be your primary fuel supply source for your private vehicle. The focus, you should do that at home. The focus is to accommodating visitors who are coming to campus, not primary commuter fuel supply needs.
And I'm sorry to cut us off, guys. I would happily nerd out about EV charging for the next.
Thank you.
We have one more project to talk about, and I still have a little quick spiel on something separate. So EV charging, as you can see, there are a lot of questions. We all got to talk about it, and then we're going to come back to the table on that in a little bit. Last project is a Coast project. They're the sponsor, but I'll note that SRPC and Rockingham Planning Commission would be kind of participating in this.
Brad just jumped on.
Oh, hey, Brad. Good timing. So if you all remember the Seacoast Commute Smart program, Ann Rugg was a Coast staff member, and she was the literal cheerleader for what's called in MPO world a transportation management area. So the whole goal is to get more people carpooling, biking, walking, taking transit, or telecommuting. And Ann Rugg was instrumental in making that program really successful. We had the commuter challenges. We have a friendly rivalry with Rockingham and competing to have the most number of people not drive to work during those. So one of them was Conquer the Cold. And it's just kind of a cool, friendly way, and there were little prizes and stuff. So businesses and other agencies were competing against each other, and it was really successful up until 2020 when Ann retired. And a lot of other things were going on in 2020 that changed the way people travel to and from work. Telecommuting was a big deal, obviously back then, and still is. What we're proposing to do is reinvigorate that program, hire a staff person like Ann to take over and fund that position for about 5 years, at which point we would, during that 5 years, finding a way to make that position permanent, whether at Coast or somewhere else. Large urban areas and urban cities have a transportation management area and a commuting program like this. And this is all I had for a slide, but come on, 1 second. Can folks see the Excel that I threw up there? Okay, cool. Just as far as some numbers to look at, these are 3 challenges, the commuter challenges that happened for about a month or 3 months individually. And so you can see the numbers of companies and the commuters and the number of trips that they didn't spend in their own vehicle by themselves, and the number of miles traveled and the tons of CO2 that were eliminated or not put into the air because of this program. So, oops. The overall effect of Ann retiring was that the participation in these programs dropped by about 50%. That's just the overall picture. A lot of people are still doing it, and a lot of people reported in surveys that they would continue to do it regardless of whether the commuter challenges were happening. But they had a huge impact, and we're hoping to kind of get that back up and make it more permanent. A cool thing about this was that there was a guaranteed ride home. So if you were participating in a challenge and your carpool driver's kid got sick and they had to bail on you and go get their kid, you could still get home, and Coast would come pick you up. I don't think that didn't happen. That happened rarely, if ever, but that is an option. So there are some things like that. That's the gist of the program. Brad or Michael, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, Colin, a sincere apology for leaving you to hold the bag on this one. Sorry about that.
You got here just in time. You're good.
I scheduled conflicting meetings. Sorry. So you did a great job. I think we're looking to duplicate what we had in place in the past. The Coast Board has supported contributing funding as match, And then we also have plans for other match partners to contribute. And we're really excited to be able to get Commute Smart Seacoast up and more active again.
And just one other thing I'll note that these programs go beyond just a 2-month or 3-month period where more folks are carpooling. It does seem to advocate and affect a culture shift in terms of employers thinking about this and realizing that, you know, people just they continue to show up to work and are just as productive if I let them ride their bike, or hey, we need to put a bike rack in, or even some places we'll think about putting in showers. It's kind of, you know, if you ride your bike in the summer and you don't want to sit there and, you know, baste for 8 hours at your desk. So again, sort of a culture shift and contributes kind of indirectly to infrastructure changes. So programs like this, the folks that did these sorts of commuting trips were probably in the room advocating for the General Sullivan Bridge over the Piscataqua River, which is still in the works. So kind of a broad, far-reaching type of project. So I'll leave it at that. Any questions on this or the other projects?
I have a general question. So in our region, we have a lot of roundabouts that have been constructed or in construction or have been proposed. And I am personally a fan of roundabouts as a motorist, but they often get presented with a pedestrian advantage in mind. And in my experience is that compared to a signalized intersection where you have a protected cross time for pedestrian, that they're much worse, that, you know, there's never a protected point to cross. You have to always judge it as a pedestrian, which is particularly difficult for people with disabilities or who are slow. And because of the way the turning movements work, you have very little lead time on knowing how much time you have till a car is going to be crossing your path. And then finally, as a motorist, as you're turning into where the crosswalk is, you're actually looking over your shoulder to see if there's oncoming traffic. And so your attention is pulled away from the crosswalk as you enter the crosswalk. And we've seen very close calls as a result of that on more than one occasion. So I'm just curious, as all these roundabouts are getting presented in pedestrian friendly areas or areas that are intended to be pedestrian friendly, have there been studies about the impact on pedestrians or how that dynamic is working?
That's a really good question, and I would have to look up some of those studies where I agree with you. I'm not too sure on. They're really great for vehicle traffic, but at best inconvenient for a pedestrian in terms of the distance that they have to go. And
I almost think they're dangerous for pedestrians.
it changes a lot of factors in uncertain ways. Where, yeah, you're right. So if you're this car and you're going up this road, you're looking this way for oncoming traffic and not necessarily seeing this pedestrian.
Yeah.
So one of the things, it would be a lot worse if the crosswalk was right here. So you see more modern design roundabouts where the crosswalks are farther away. The one big benefit I see for pedestrians is that they're only having to look at one direction of traffic rather than two. And the thing with traffic lights is when they fail due to human not paying attention and blow through it, that's where they really get dangerous, and that is basically eliminated in a roundabout scenario.
Well, it's eliminated because all of the onus is put on the pedestrian to find a safe a gap, and the pedestrian has no illusion of trusting a signal, which might be safer for some folks. But you know, if I'm crossing that crosswalk, I'm trying to see, is there a car coming around this corner? Is there a car coming around from this side? There's like 3 places where a car could be coming from. And some of them, I don't know if they're gonna be turning off and not coming to my path, or if they're gonna be coming to my path to the last minute. And if it's a roundabout where there's almost always a car in there, I don't have much lead time at all to know if that car is actually coming my way or not, and if there's a gap. And I have to look at like 3 different places to wonder.
So that is a good reminder for me. I need to look up some studies, and we have a number of resources to do that. I would advocate for the addition of the pedestrian activated beacons that make it very clear that a person is crossing, just as one thing, like the ones they have in Rochester downtown and in other places. That's certainly not a silver bullet, because again, as you said, this person is looking over their shoulder at the other oncoming traffic. So
Colin, there is one of those in what you're showing on screen, of course, on the Route 4, so on the western leg. There's what they call the Hawk, the overhead beacons. You can see it hanging there. That's pedestrian activated. So that is one of the features that's installed. And I would just say, remember, a lot of the roundabouts are being proposed at what currently are unsignalized intersections, right? So sometimes without crosswalks, period.
Yeah, in the region, it's definitely a mix. And I can see the presence of any crosswalk at a place where traffic is going to slow is better than what is currently built in some environments. And there's certainly some environments where there's very low pedestrian traffic, and that's probably not as much of a concern. But there are some places where it is a pedestrian heavy place, and it might actually be replacing an existing controlled intersection. So I just think regionally, this is worth thinking about, especially when I hear it spoken of as a pedestrian improvement.
yeah. And I think especially thinking this is a good example of designing a roundabout or whatever the infrastructure is for the future, not the present, where Dover, as far as I know, is still working on the footpath that would essentially take you from downtown to this intersection and connect to the bridge over the Piscataqua River, the pedestrian bridge. So potentially more foot traffic coming along here, and if this was designed for the pedestrian levels of traffic at this time, not future, then that's where you run into that problem. So
Mike, if you don't mind, I'll jump into my experience too, is that oftentimes probably traffic is going at a much higher rate of speed than that roundabout was designed for. So that the roundabout you're looking at right there, people whiz through there.
yeah. So thank you for that question. That's a really good point.
There you go. Imagine someone with a walker. Not gonna happen. Anyway, thank you.
No, it's a good point. Any other questions on CMAQ projects? Again, we're optimistic that they will all get funded pending the air quality analyses, which I'll be working on as we go forward. So, cool. I have one last thing to talk about. This is not the title that I chose for this document. It's a little bit long and federally. Just call it the coordinated plan. We work with Coast and what's called the Alliance for Community Transportation to develop a plan for Stratford and Rockingham regions. It covers both regions, looking at services, so public transportation services for the broadest range of folks. We look at the transportation needs in the area that I'll go over, look for gaps in that transportation network, and look at the range of service providers, and then proposing actions towards improving the network and the coordination between those various providers. And in the end, this is required to get federal funding to provide that service. So again, here's the whole area, and there are multiple regional coordinating councils in the state, and that is an entity that coordinates all the various transportation services. And that includes Coast and Wildcat, so the fixed route system, demand response services. So Coast runs their Americans with Disabilities Act. That's an on-demand service. There are various what's called the volunteer driver program, where volunteers drive their own vehicles and go take people to and from non-emergency medical appointments. There are programs like the Community Action Partnership of Stratford County that have a bus and they take people to shopping trips and other social things. Taxi cabs are part of this network. They are open to the public. They are prohibitively expensive if you have something like you need to get to dialysis appointments. You're not going to be able to afford a taxi trip for multiple times a week if you can't drive yourself. So there are a huge range of programs and agencies that participate in this regional coordinating council. There are other ones that don't participate. They just exist. They're a private company that provide this service for folks. But these, you can kind of get a sense for the different types of services. So Coast Fixed Route serves, the majority, the biggest number of people at 242,000 trips per year. And they're serving folks getting to jobs, getting to school, getting to medical appointments, going shopping. So all of these different entities provide service for specific types of people. Maybe it's just seniors or folks with disabilities or a mix. And they may only be able to take people to medical appointments, so they can't take people to anything and everything. So that's the general gist of the types of programs. We looked at demographics. Thankfully, we had 2020 data from the census, but these are some of the highlights where we're looking at who might need transportation assistance because of their income or a disability or their age, that would keep them from driving or owning and operating their own vehicle. And this is just a number. It's hard to really estimate the number of people out there, and we're just making estimates. So we did some analyses. This is just the total population for the region. It's a little tiny to see on your screen there, but the darker the color, the greater the population in that town. And this is obvious where the urban centers are. Pretty broad mix of where people live if they're over 65. That's no surprise. So just think about the region and where folks live that might need they might need some transportation assistance. And unfortunately, they don't all live along a Coast fixed route next to a stop. So those are the folks that need these door-to-door or curb-to-curb services. Folks with a disability, and that can mean they are unable to walk, unable to see, unable to hear, or have a mental delay or disability. So anything can keep you from driving yourself. Folks with low income, cars are really expensive, and housing is really expensive, and all of these things can keep you from being able to get to the stuff that you need on a daily basis. And so just to note there that Durham, a lot of those students show up as being below the poverty level because they're students and they're not making a lot of money and they're at school and that's their job. But we kind of keep that as an asterisk in our head. Folks with limited vehicle access, this could be families that don't have any vehicle. They could have two working parents and only one vehicle, which really messes up your life if you need to get to daycare or someone's using the other person's using the vehicle and you need to go get formula or whatever it is, or get your kid to a doctor's appointment. So the data, we have good data from the decennial census as far as people and where they live. We have the American Community Survey, which the margins of error get a little sketchy when you get into the rural areas, and that because that's an estimate of the entire state, and kind of pared down to the region. So just keep that in mind that we have two major data sources, and the American Community Survey is not exact. It's a good bellwether, but not a full real number. Any questions on the demographics? I'm trying not to belabor things too long since we're already at 10 o'clock. But we take a look at the types of services that are out there and where people might be that need those services, to kind of target improvements to the network. So the volunteer driver programs that I mentioned, they work on a town by town basis. So Ready Rides is the big one in our area, and they go to the town of Lee and say, hey, we have this program, we can get your seniors and whoever to their medical appointments if they can't drive. We need volunteers and we need a little bit of funding. And then all of those rides, those folks can get service if they know that it exists. Funding this is quite an interesting balance, where again, I mentioned the federal dollars, that's through the FTA 5310 program. So 5310 is just is funding for transportation for folks with seniors and disabilities. That has to get matched, and Coast gets a lot of different matching sources. So the community development block grant, a couple of towns and cities provide some of that money that they get from the state to these programs. Vehicle registration, some towns have the optional $5 registration fee, and they contribute some of that money to support these programs. And then the different providers just have cash that they match to participate. There are a lot of small grants from hospitals and charitable foundations. The Ready Rides program that I mentioned can provide non-cash, so this is they can do in-kind match. And then the state surface transportation block grant funds that New Hampshire gets, they provided some of that money this past round to support these. So general findings and recommendations. This region, our region, is kind of held up as a model for this coordination effort. Jeff Donald is the Coast employee that is sort of a central facilitator, if you want to think about it that way, of getting all of these different transportation providers in the same room regularly and talking about how do we serve more people more efficiently. And whether that's the big recent improvement is a central computer system that people can apply with a few clicks. It will sign them up for every service they're eligible for. And then when they go to, I need to get from here to here on such and such a day, the computer system will look at all the different providers that participate and schedule that ride in an automated way. So coordinating all those different services is part of the battle here. There are still a lot of unmet needs in the region. There are a lot of folks that don't have transportation service. They may just not know that the system exists. So that's part of the game here. We have rural and urban communities, but just because someone lives in downtown Dover doesn't necessarily mean that they're able to get to. If they need to get up to Frisbee and Rochester, they may not be able to do that. Eligibility is an issue. You have to be over 65 or have a disability. So there's a whole patchwork of things there, depending on the type of service. And then all of those little grants and different funding sources don't always show up every year. So Jeff and Brad and Michael are all having to constantly balance the different funding sources so that we can get that federal dollar, the federal money, and keep the service running. So TripLink is that central system that I talked about, that's been around for a couple of years now, but is still being built. So just some of the major findings and recommendations. I'm not going to go into all the detailed ones, but just supporting and building that regional coordinating council. And getting more of those providers to join TripLink and kind of get all their rides scheduled through it and centralize all of that as much as possible. Just serves to help more people get the transportation they need. And then Brad and Michael and Jeff and all the other public transit providers around the state have done a lot of work in the past year or so to reach out to legislators and get more state funding. So it's getting better, but New Hampshire is still, I don't know if it's 50th out of 50, but as far as state contributions to federal transit, it's literal pennies on the dollar compared to comparable states like Maine and Vermont. So working on advocating things haven't worked. It's looking positive. They've had a lot of good positive meetings with senators and House representatives and executive councilors to promote for more putting state funding in the budget toward public transit that would support fixed route as well as operations like this. I think that was it. It's a whole complicated web of different issues, and I kind of blitzed through it. That's the 50,000-foot view. But any questions on that? On the coordinated plan? This is in a draft. It's going to have a 30-day public comment period, and we're planning to have a public hearing in April at the policy meeting. So there will be other opportunities to look through the larger plan. Last thing I'll mention is that if one of the simplest things to get more people transportation services is to make sure there's kind of front and center on town and city websites. So you can link to the TripLink system and just make sure people know that transportation services are out there rather than making them kind of try to look online and figure it out for themselves. So that's one thing. And I know Jeff has been reaching out to communities. So last thing on.
What's Jeff's last name?
Donald. Jeff Donald. All right, that was it for me. Someone have a question, Lucy?
Colin, I just wanted to just make one general comment in terms of the CMAQ. The intent obviously is to include those in the draft 10-year plan and per Bill's memo that all the RPCs got. We just want to make it clear that in terms of the air quality, that process, they're still working on the methodology for all of the RPCs. Will be using the same methodology, and there's going to be some future discussion with the RPCs on that. So.
And I'm really sorry. We were supposed to do community updates first on the. Any other kind of local news and updates before we turn the non-meeting?
Yeah, if everyone's okay with it, I just wanted to remind everyone that the state clean diesel program is open still. We are accepting project proposals through March 31st. We have over $900,000 for projects that replace or upgrade diesel vehicles, engines, non-road equipment, construction equipment, and stuff like that. Pretty much anything that has a diesel engine that meets certain federal requirements is eligible. The program is a relatively easy application. It's a partial funding for reimbursements. I think we do a pretty good job of getting these out the door pretty quickly relative to other programs that you might have some familiarity with. Projects like I saw like Steve, your project to replace biodiesel buses. If UNH wants to do something with DERA, we're always happy to work with other vehicles that aren't already bespoke for a different program. I'll drop a link in the chat. Anyone is welcome to shoot me an email if you have any questions. All the information is on the website that I'll drop. Normally I would say please give me a call. My phone is a little weird right now. We're doing some personnel changing, so the phone doesn't work, but shoot me an email. I'll be really quick to respond. Yeah, thanks. Open for cities, towns, businesses, schools, school districts, whatever. If you own the diesel, we can talk. So thanks.
Thanks, Ricky. And I'll make sure to send that link to folks. All right.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Any other thoughts, questions, things? Good luck with the snow. I'm gonna have to go get a roof rake. All right. Good weekend, all. Thank you all for being here.